Mr. Sterling, we need to be realistic. The goal now is control, not recovery. The boy will never walk. He may never speak. You need to accept that. The room was dim. No reply came. Only the faint scratch of a fountain pen meeting leather-bound paper, then silence. Beyond the soundproof glass, the Boston air was freezing. Fog crept through the window panes, draping the harbor like a thin mourning veil. At the top floor of the Sterling estate, there was no room for error. Pristine white lighting, gray stone floors, not a single decorative item out of place. Alex Sterling sat motionless in a black leather chair. The glass wall reflected a man in a flawless gray suit tie, perfectly aligned, not a millimeter off. But his hands resting on his knees were clenched so tightly the knuckles had gone white. On the table lay a tablet. The screen was split into 8 panels, 8 camera feeds from the same room where his son was seated. Leo, 9 years old, tousled blonde hair, a face pale as wax. The boy sat upright in a high-tech wheelchair, unmoving eyes staring straight ahead, yet focused on nothing at all. A small heart monitor wrapped around his wrist. Steady. The boy was breathing. Alive, but silent as a statue. Alex looked at the screen, then turned his eyes toward the real glass. Leo was just in the next room, only steps away, but he didn't go in. Never when the boy was awake. Never if it meant disrupting that fragile equilibrium. A single misstep, an unnecessary touch, he would not allow it. Control was the way he loved his son, and also the way he punished himself. Every Sunday. 3:00 p.m. A Bentley came to a gentle stop in front of a red brick building tucked away on a tree-lined street in Beacon Hill. The Gilded Quill. Coffee, rare books, quiet reading space. Most patrons were scholars, artists, or collectors. A place where conversations never rose above a whisper, and the turning of a page could still be heard. Alex opened the door. A soft chime from the windbell. No one turned to look, and he liked it that way. Leo sat in his wheelchair, pulled up to a marble-topped table near the window. Afternoon light filtered through silk curtains, casting long shadows across the vintage tile floor. Alex pulled out a chair and sat across from his son, a copy of the Wall Street Journal in hand. Everything is as usual, except for one thing. The waitress approached. Not hurried, not slow. No fake 5-star smile. Just steady steps and a neat auburn bun at the nape of her neck. No makeup, no perfume. A faded burgundy apron worn but spotless. On her chest, Isabella. She placed the hot chocolate in front of Leo, then leaned down gently. Her eyes met his at eye level. "Good afternoon, my little poet." No expectations, no pity, no waiting for a response. Just a small nod before she turned away, as if that greeting was a ritual, and the boy an old friend, worthy of quiet respect. Alex hadn't yet looked up from the paper, but his hand froze mid-page. It was the first time in years that a server had not spoken to him. 10 minutes passed. She passed by again, tray in hand, clearing a nearby table. A faint melody escaped her lips. Something unfamiliar. Not jazz, not pop. An old Italian folk tune, tentative, melodic, like wind brushing across delicate strings. Her fingers tapped a gentle rhythm on the wooden table. Ta, 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 ta. No one noticed, except one pair of eyes moved. Slowly. So very slowly. Leo. The hollow gaze shifted. His eyes followed the dancing fingers. His head tilted. A faint sound emerged from his throat like wind slipping through worn wooden slats. Alex heard it. He lowered the paper. His eyes caught the moment, and he froze. His hand trembled. The paper slid silently to the floor. Was it a mechanical reflex, a spasm, or a response? His heart pounded not from hope, but from fear. Fear that he had hoped. Fear of losing it again. That day, Alex said nothing when they left the cafe. He simply gave a slight nod when Isabella bowed politely, then tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Eyes forward, but his mind lingered behind. Back where a little boy had followed a melody with his eyes. A small crack had formed in the glass that encased his world, and like all cracks, if left untouched, it would spread. Spring winds had begun to sneak into the cobbled streets of Beacon Hill. Melting snow revealed dark, tangled tree roots like old memories unearthed. Inside the gilded quill, sunlight streamed through glass panes, casting golden light across the oakwood floors. Alex Sterling returned. Not on a Sunday, Tuesday, 3:37 p.m. The cafe was quiet. No one noticed. No one dared to ask. He chose the same table. Leo was wheeled to the same spot. The boy sat in silence as always. But this time, his eyes weren't staring into nothingness. His eyes were searching. And when Isabella Bella passed by with her tray, the soft tap of her rubber-soled shoes brushing the floor in that familiar rhythm, Leo tilted his head. Slowly, but deliberately. A few days later, this time it was Thursday, Alex came again, still said nothing. He sat down and placed his tablet on the table. Didn't check emails, didn't open surveillance feeds. His eyes followed only one thing: the way Bella moved. Not hurried, not distracted. She walked as if gliding through the world, not owning it, but not fearing it either. Every time she passed Leo, she tapped out a rhythm: ta, 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 ta. Sometimes a French lullaby, sometimes a slow tango, sometimes a bit of spontaneous jazz. Leo began to make faint sounds in his throat. Not words, not groans, just sounds. Undefined, but alive. Alex saw his son respond for the first time, and in that fleeting moment, he wasn't afraid. One afternoon, the instrumental version of Cheek to Cheek played softly in the cafe. Bella approached with hot chocolate. She didn't look at Alex. She gently leaned down, placing the cup before Leo. Their eyes met. Just a moment, a blink of the universe. Such lovely music. It'd be a shame not to dance, don't you think? She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she reached out and took his small, limp hand and began to sway it gently to the rhythm. Not pulling, not pushing, just a dance for the hands. Leo didn't pull away. And then he giggled. A brief, unfamiliar sound, but it rang out like the first bell after a long, frozen winter. Alex almost shot to his feet. He gripped the armrest tightly, trying not to tremble. His lips moved for the first time in years, not to issue a command, but to whisper a thank you. That evening, the Sterling estate wasn't its usual dead silence. For the first time in years, Alex stepped into Leo's room while the boy was still awake. He powered down the monitors, turned off the tracking system, then gave the order play music. And from the hidden speakers, the soft jazz from the gilded quill began to play. Leo lay on the bed, eyes wide fixed on his father. Alex slowly sat down. His hands trembled, his palms were dry, but still he reached out, touched his son's hand, and swayed it. 1, 2, 3. He swayed clumsily, stiffly, like a machine learning how to dance. But this time he wasn't trying to control. He just wanted to connect. Leo didn't pull away. His eyelids fluttered. He said nothing. But the way he let his small hand stay in his father's, like an unspoken melody, was the gentlest reply in the world. The next morning, Eleanor, the longtime housekeeper, found Alex in the kitchen. No suit, no phone. He was making tea. For two, will Miss Rossi be visiting? She asked, keeping her voice even. Alex didn't look up, but the corner of his mouth lifted. I invited her to teach Leo a bit of rhythm, call it therapy. A beat of hesitation, then more softly. And me, I need to relearn how to hear music. Eleanor said nothing, but moments later she quietly took out the fine porcelain teacups, the ones reserved for special occasions. Bella arrived that Saturday afternoon. She didn't ask why. She didn't ask who he was. She simply laid out a small mat in the center of the living room, plugged in her portable speaker, and played a gentle tune. Leo was wheeled into the middle of the room. Alex sat further back. But this time he didn't hide. He sat where he could see everything, not through a camera, not through glass. Bella didn't teach. She simply sat on the floor beside Leo holding a small drum and tapped a beat. Leo smiled. Not broadly, but undeniably. He tapped back. A simple rhythm. But it was an answer. That evening, Alex stood on the upper balcony. The Boston wind whipped against his cheek. Below, the harbor lights shimmered. In his hands was a pair of small shoes, old white soft-soled children's ballroom shoes. He'd first seen them hanging in the window of a vintage shop the day he brought Leo to the Gilded Quill, and he had gone back to buy them. Not because Leo needed them, but because for the first time Alex wanted to believe he might. April passed gently, as if even spring itself had slowed down to witness the strange bloom unfolding between three lives that were never meant to intertwine. Every week Bella came to the estate. They called it Rhythm Hour, no syllabus, no therapy devices, just music, smooth wooden floors, and a little boy gradually learning to feel the world again through drums and tiny claps. Leo laughed more. His hands began to move with intention, small but deliberate. He looked up when his name was called. His eyes were no longer hollow. They held questions, still searching for words. Eleanor observed everything from afar, a cup of hot tea in hand. She never said much, but sometimes she added an extra cookie beside Leo's hot chocolate, or lowered the curtains early so sunlight wouldn't hurt his eyes. The house, once a quiet museum, now resonated with new sounds, music, laughter, soft sighs of relief. And even the sound of Alex singing the wrong lyrics to a lullaby while Bella tapped out rhythms on his son's palm. Then one afternoon in the 50th floor office of Sterling Corp., the first storm rolled in. "Alex, all we need is your signature." The young man's slick hair gleaming slid the contract across the glass table. The Beacon Hill project. High-end office complex. Most of the locals have sold. Just a few old storefronts left, but our legal team will handle it. They've hired a community lawyer, but it's nothing we can't squash. Alex hadn't even read it yet, but his head pulsed hot the moment he heard those three words: Beacon Hill. Old storefronts. Handle. A red brick building flashed in his mind. Towering bookshelves. Instrumental jazz. A red-haired girl tapping her fingers to a beat, sunlight brushing her shoulders. The Gilded Quill. He yanked the contract and scanned the address. Confirmed. It was inside the redevelopment zone, and Sterling Corp. Was the storm about to wipe it away. That night, he didn't sleep. In his office, the light from the monitor lit his face, now worn and lined with exhaustion. The screen was split into two. One half showed the contract, a deal worth tens of millions. The other, a photo of Leo smiling, clutching a tiny drum. Which dream was he about to destroy? Then, as if the world itself conspired to test this fragile hope blooming inside him, Leo got sick. High fever, trouble breathing. Alex drove like a madman through the rain, whispering over and over, "Please. No, please don't." The hospital was a blinding white. Machines beeped in erratic rhythm. The lights never turned off. Pneumonia. Exposure beyond the recommended limits. "We warned you, Mr. Sterling." Each sentence stabbed him like a dull knife. He didn't argue. He just stood silently by his son's bedside. Leo lay still, face flushed, lips dry and barely parted. No rhythm, No drumbeat, no gaze, only silence. Was it his fault he had dared to hope? He had let his son laugh. He had brought him into the real world, and this was the price. The next day he returned home. Bella was already there. Eleanor had called her. She looked at him, expressionless, but her voice, low, trembling, broke the silence I heard. Did I bring danger to Leo? Alex didn't respond. He couldn't. She didn't wait for an answer. She turned to leave. Bella. His voice cracked hoarse. It's not your fault. It's me. I don't even know anymore. I just wanted Leo to feel alive. She didn't look back, just gave a small nod. 3 days later, Alex sat alone in his office. In front of him were two things: a medical file stamped, "Recommend return to full isolation protocol," and a final contract titled Beacon Hill Redevelopment Final Phase. He stared at them like twin serpents coiled and waiting for his hand. Both were paths back, one to the old Alex Sterling-controlled cold unfeeling, one to the survival of the empire he had built, and both betrayed the very thing he was struggling to believe in. Outside, the rain began to fall, tiny drops tapping the glass, trailing down like tears too proud to fall. Alex picked up the phone. His voice deep, steady, and without hesitation. "I've made my decision." The screen went black. No one knew whom he had called. A lawyer, a doctor, Bella. But one thing was certain. He had just let something go. The board meeting began at 9 a.m. inside the glass conference room on the 58th floor of Sterling Corp. No one was seated. Everyone stood buzzing around the digital schematics projected on the wall. Phrases like ROI, strategic junction, and sunk cost floated by like meaningless symbols inside Alex's mind. When it was his turn to speak, the room turned to face him. He nodded. No preamble, no presentation, no justification. The Beacon Hill project is canceled, permanently. The room fell silent. Someone laughed, thought he was joking, but he didn't laugh. On his way out of the building, Alex didn't take the executive elevator. He pressed the button for the ground floor like everyone else. In his hand was a small box containing the ballroom shoes. The very box Bella had once thrown back at him after a night that changed everything. 2 days earlier, Alex had rushed to the Gilded Quill. He wanted to see Bella, to explain, to tell her he'd called off the project, to tell her he chose her, chose Leo, chose music over concrete. But he was too late. She already knew. The shop's owner, a frail old man still trembling from the shock, had just informed Bella that the building would be cleared out in 60 days. They hadn't said Sterling Corp, but the address was unmistakable. She stood in the room she loved like a soul being strangled. She didn't cry. She simply took the box, the white shoes he'd given her, and placed it on the counter like a question that didn't need answering. "It was you, wasn't it?" Her voice wasn't raised, but it hurt. Deeply. This was all a game from the start. What was I to you? A test case. An emotional variable, I thought. I believed. Alex stood frozen. His lips moved, but his throat locked up. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry," wanted to say, "I chose you." But she had already turned away. Her shoulders trembled just barely. Today he came back. Not to fix things, but to surrender. Bella was organizing books in the back storeroom. She didn't look at him, didn't ask why he was there. Alex walked closer, still holding the shoebox. "I used to think I was strong because I could build the tallest towers. But really, I was just building walls. The higher they rose, the colder I became. And then I put Leo in a cage. Beautiful, clean, safe. But it was a cage. He paused, staring at the old tiled floor. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm not that man anymore. I made a choice, and I lost almost everything. Bella slowly turned to him. Her eyes were full of tears. Why now? Why not earlier, before everything broke? He shook his head. Because I had to break first. Silence settled between them. Then a small sound broke it. Not a cry, not a footstep. Bella. They both turned sharply. Leo. The boy sat nearby. Eleanor had brought him in without anyone noticing. His small face, flushed lips, slightly parted eyes fixed on Bella. One syllable, but clear, intentional. Bella! Bella burst into tears. Alex staggered back as if struck. He grabbed onto a bookshelf for support, his face pale, and then tears spilled not from grief, but because a knot deep within him had finally come undone. The boy didn't speak a sentence, just a name, but it was a bridge between two adults on the edge of collapse. Bella rushed to embrace Leo. Alex stepped closer slowly, placed his hand on their shoulders. 3 people, a circle, a forgiveness that needed no words. That evening, they sat inside the cafe after closing. Bella wiped dust from the old books. Eleanor brought in a pot of tea. Leo dozed off in his father's arms. Alex looked around the space he had nearly destroyed, and now he didn't want to own it. He wanted to protect it. This place shouldn't belong to just us, he whispered. The miracle you created deserves to be shared. Bella looked at him. What do you mean? He looked at Leo, then back at her. His eyes glowed not like a CEO making an investment pitch, but like a father who had just found a reason to keep living. A center, not a hospital, not a research lab. A place with music, and light, and rhythm. With Bella, with Leo. A place where children don't have to speak to be heard. Night wind swept through the old window panes. The wind chime gave a soft, delicate ring. No more words were needed. Only glances exchanged, no longer guarded. That night, Boston felt unusually quiet. And somewhere in the dark, a new dream began to take shape. 1 year later, a gleaming brass plaque now hung outside the historic red brick building at the end of Mount Vernon Street in Beacon Hill. Elio's Rhythm, a center for music movement and connection. Not a therapy clinic. Not a hospital. Just a place warm, filled with light, where every child is truly heard in their own way. Inside, there were no machines, only laughter. Children of every color, shape, and level of ability moved through the room. Some swayed in wheelchairs. Some clapped to the beat of a drum. Some closed their eyes and felt music through the vibrations in the floor. Bella stood in the center of the large room, hair tied up, crisp white blouse holding a tiny handbell beaming. Who's ready to lead the rhythm today? Leo raised his arm. Not high, not fast, but just enough for the bell on his wrist to give a soft ting. The whole room applauded. Alex sat at the back, sleeves rolled up, helping a little girl button her coat. No one called him Mr. Sterling here. He was just Alex, Leo's father. When the project began, no one believed someone like him would fund something nonprofit. He didn't argue. He just smiled. Because he no longer built towers. He built bridges. Eleanor still ran the tiny tea corner tucked in the back. At 3 p.m. sharp, she brewed a pot of chamomile for Bella and a cup of hot chocolate for Leo, a ritual that never changed. On the wall hung a black and white photograph from the center's first day. Alex is holding Leo in his arms. Bella beside them, her hand on their shoulders. 3 people. A family. Leo wasn't cured. He still used a wheelchair. Still communicated through a speech tablet and gestures. but he had friends. He had a place to belong. He was no longer a child limited. He was the heartbeat of the center. The rhythm leader every Friday afternoon. The first child to ever say Bella's name. The first miracle and the living proof that miracles are real. That night, the center held its first annual fundraising gala. The entire ground floor of the old gilded quill had been transformed into a small event hall, preserving its wooden beams, antique chandeliers, and stained glass windows. Soft lights, gentle music, no branding, no product placements. Just a night to tell stories. Bella took the stage to introduce the guest of honor, Alex Sterling. He walked up. No suit, no tie. Just a father salt and pepper hair, steady eyes, a low, calm voice. I used to think power was control. Building the tallest towers, moving markets with a nod. And then I met a child who couldn't walk, couldn't speak, and I realized I couldn't even make him smile. He paused, eyes drifting to the front row. Leo sat there, Bella beside him. Leo's hand rested on a silver bell ready. And then I met a girl, no designer clothes, no arguments, just tapping rhythms with her fingertips. And I watched my son come alive again. People say money can't buy happiness. I think they're wrong. It can if you use it to give. The room fell silent. But not out of tension. It was a silence of remembrance of people they once overlooked and moments they missed. Then Alex stepped down. He walked to Leo. As soft jazz filled the air, the very song from the Gilded Quill years ago, he gently lifted Leo from his chair. Leo didn't resist. Alex held his son to his chest and placed his hand over Leo's and swayed. 1, 2, 3. No stiffness, no fear, only rhythm. Bella stood and joined them on stage. She didn't speak. She simply laid her hand on Alex's shoulder. 3 people, under the light, no stage, no audience, only family. Final scene. A large photograph hung in the main hallway of Leo's rhythm. 2 shadows, one tall, one small, swaying in the morning light, hand in hand, no music needed. A silent dance, but unmistakable. Below it, a small inscription read, "Sometimes the quietest rhythms are the ones that change everything." The screen slowly fades to black. A silver bell rings once more. A man who once believed power and wealth could control everything. Learned how to listen from a child who didn't speak. A boy once thought to be trapped in silence. Awakened the hearts of an entire community with a single word. And a girl, no titles, no fame, changed everything with a simple hand rhythm and a heart without conditions. Sometimes you don't need to fix someone to make them happy. You just have to show up, listen, touch them with sincerity, and let them find their own voice. Because love isn't controlled. Love is connection. If this story touched your heart, drop a like and share this video to spread its healing message. And don't forget to subscribe to Toch Story, where we tell stories that remind you miracles often begin with the smallest of things.